1.
I saw the rake or something that I call the rake. I can't exactly tell you what it was. I was driving late at night in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. For context, I live 30 miles south from Almosa, Colorado. I was driving on the back roads with my buddy, taking him home near my house. It was about 12 a.m. when out of nowhere, this thing appears in my headlights in the middle of the road. It was crouched over some roadkill. It was humanoid. It was pale. It looked like a wendigo from Until Dawn. It looked like it had to be at least 7 feet tall. It had abnormally long arms, no ears, no nose, and some nasty teeth. It wasn't skinny, but its skin was tight with ribs visible and had long claws at the end of its hands. I was barely able to dodge it with my truck as I was driving considerably fast. As I swerved around it, time seemed to slow down, and it looked up from the roadkill it was eating and stared at me as I passed with its yellow eyes. I immediately braked and yelled at my friend, "What the fuck? Did you just see that?" His eyes were wide with fear, and he nodded at me. I threw my truck in reverse, but when I approached the roadkill, it was gone. And my buddy claims to have seen it too, so I know I'm not crazy. When I was a kid, I read a lot of stories about the rake. I know the rake isn't real, so maybe they invented a creature that already existed. Maybe it's a cave creature like in The Descendants. If you have any questions, please ask. I'm doing a lot of research. I want to find out what this is. I've been obsessed with him. I need answers, and I won't stop looking.
Number 2.
I have a story. It isn't mine, but it happened to my uncle. He used to tell this story when we went camping, and it scared the lights out of me every time I heard it. We live in Utah, and my uncle Mark went on a mission at 19. They sent him to an Indian reserve in Arizona and paired him up with a companion named Carl. When they got there was a huge rift with the locals on the reserve with them being there. They didn't want my uncle and Carl staying on the reserve grounds. Eventually, they came to a compromise that they would stay on the outskirts in a trailer. This reserve wasn't very big and was located next to a heavily wooded area. The first night, they were trying to sleep when all of a sudden, their trailer started to shake violently back and forth. Startled and not sure what was happening, they climbed under their table for cover. Mark could distinctively hear someone pushing it from both sides of the trailer, like a group of people, but after 5 minutes, it stopped. That next day, they made their rounds on the reserve and were talking to the locals. Carl made a comment to one of the families that their trailer was shaking the night before. The family got quiet and told them they had to leave. They thought it was strange but didn't think much of it. The next night, it happened again. They awoke to their trailer shaking back and forth. Again, they climbed underneath their table until it stopped. This went on for 2 more nights. Any time they talked to anyone about it, they got quiet and told them to leave. Mark started thinking that due to the tension of their arrival, the locals were doing this to scare them off the reserve. They then go into a convenience store and they were talking together about how frustrated they were with the situation. The clerk overheard and said, "They can't talk about it. It's forbidden." Confused, they ask him, "Can't talk about what?" The guy continues to tell them about the skinwalkers. He says that they are evil demons that were once Native American witches. If they talk about it, the skinwalkers will come for their souls. They just walked out of there baffled. They thought it was another scare tactic. So that night, when the shaking started again, my uncle decided to be brave and confront them. He went to the trailer door and flew it open and yelled, "Hey." When he did that, he saw three animals run off. Two were wolves and one was a bear, but they looked strange, almost with human features. As he watched them run towards the trees, all three stood up on two legs and walked slowly towards the tree line, making a human crackling laugh. It scared him so bad they called their mission president that next morning and asked to be moved. They were relocated that day. For a year, nothing happened. One day, they announced that Carl was being relocated to another city and Mark was getting a new companion, Jimmy. They had to drive for about an hour to pick Jimmy up from the airport. The road they traveled on went through the boundaries of the reserve. They arrived at about 8 p.m. and met Jimmy, and they go to leave. The mission president tells Jimmy we are driving through a dangerous area at night, so we can't make any stops. If you need to use the restroom, you'll need to go now. Jimmy says, I'm fine. The mission president gets serious enough to even freak out Mark. I'm not kidding. Go to your business. Jimmy was insistent that he was fine, so they hit the road. As they were about 30 minutes into the drive, they were going through the area of the reserve boundaries. Jimmy started complaining that he needed to pee really bad. The mission president says, we can't stop here. You'll have to hold it. Jimmy keeps going on. I really can't hold it. So the mission president stops the car and says, okay, but you'll have to do your business next to the car door. And if I say get into the car, you better get into the car fast. With a look of confusion, Jimmy says all right, opens the door, and starts doing his business. About 5 seconds later, the mission president says nothing and yanks Jimmy into the car and floors it. Jimmy and Mark start freaking out. What's going on? The mission president says nothing and just increases the speed. All of a sudden, Mark sees something next to the car on his right. A giant wolf-looking man was running on 2 feet next to the car. Mark looked at the speedometer. They were going over 60 miles an hour and still increasing. The wolf creature kept right next to the car for 10 minutes until it finally took off into the trees. Shaking, Jimmy gets out of the car when they arrive and says, what did I just see? The mission president says, next time I tell you to take care of your business, you take care of your business.
Number 3.
So my friend was walking in the forest with her dog. All of a sudden, she describes a thick, deer-like on 2 legs hunched over appear in front of her. She didn't see its face, but described the glow coming from it. Her dog starts going crazy and dragging her towards it. It soon disappears into the woods. But after that incident, she's been hearing her name being called in the woods and tapping on her windows. Could this have been a wendigo? I live in Alberta, so I have my doubts because I've heard that they are in eastern Canada. Thank you for watching the first ever episode of The Nightmare Zone. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. If you have any comments on how to improve my videos, please leave them down below. If you have any scary stories you'll like to send, please send them to the email down below.